like 50% of my friends this election, maybe more, voted Trump, who all have always been Democrat.
That's
like
such a huge turn.
It's a huge turn that I've never felt.
What was the biggest catalyst for them specifically? Like post election now, like what, and post Trump getting into office, what was like the core thing that made them turn?
That's a good one. I mean, I think Elon was a big part of it, but I think it's so hard to pin it on, but I feel like it's like this frustration that you couldn't say the truth. Like there was this fascinating discussion. Oh, this is another one I had with my family, and they were talking about cults and how a cult, and it got to the point with religion where we all know a religion's crazy, but we can't say it's crazy because otherwise like we get like roasted or massive social penalties essentially. And and then like I hear them for this 20-minute conversation and I'm like, exactly. Like that's like they, them. Like we all had to listen to people say their wrong gender and know it was their wrong gender and pretend like it was okay for, I don't know. I don't want to get too political into that, but it's just, that's one example. And it's just like things like that, where it's like the DEI got pushed too far. I think that is like the biggest sentiment that I heard from even like every Democrat agrees with that too, except for like the really diehard people. But like most of the people in Seattle are like, this just got too far. Like we're trying to accept everybody. We're trying to be all love and welcoming, but it just got pushed to like this weird thing where like we have all these weird DEI rules. And if you don't follow
weaponized sympathy,
you're instantly evil. And it's like, no, you just put yourself on a little hill and made me be tiny based on this new rule that you just invented. You're actually mean because you're putting me down as the white knight of holier than thou, that woke splaining movement that I get hit with in Seattle nonstop. It's just like, and then I'm like, no, like you don't get to decide which word I'm allowed to say now because you decided it. It's like, why don't you take that word out of your vocabulary?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, I'm getting carried away, but like, I think that is the sentiment that I just explained that I think like has kind of like had Trump break through. Because even like all these liberal people are just like, yeah, like shit was ridiculous the past 4 years. And we all know it. And that's why I was like, fuck it. Trump's not perfect, but he's a change. So,
yeah.
And then the fact that I personally think I become way more bullish on Trump and Elon the more I've looked into what they're doing. As of like, oh, this isn't just Elon supporting a new politician being evil like the media. This is like, holy shit. Elon's like you're saying, far as I like, he's getting involved. Like he's about to like, he's like sleeping in DC with his new like squad of like the nerdiest, most elite 20-year-olds he's recruited to scheme on shit ever. Like this is like Elon is going balls to the wall to like disrupt this as if it was a problem at SpaceX. And that is like, whoa, that's like way better than I thought of what was going to happen of even just Elon beating Trump. So we would have to stop regulation that was fighting Elon's companies. And that's a benefit to America. No, now the benefit to America is we're getting a whole disruption of government by the master himself, Elon Musk. I mean, a pièce de résistance of just systems creation here is about to occur for civilization. We have the smartest dude ever in the history of ever building systems about to rewrite what America could do with unlimited potential and build a utopia. Like this is like, whoa. And so I think that
here's the crazy thing. Can I jump in real quick, Gally, for like a second?
Yeah, please,
and you know how they're doing that by just returning to the Constitution. Like they're not passing new laws. They're just letting the country work. That's the craziest part of this whole thing. Like it's not like, oh my God, they're going in and redoing all this. No, they're just working within the confines of the Constitution. It's like, okay, that's the good outcome. Wow, maybe the guys that built the Constitution in the first place had a good idea. Anyway, go ahead. I don't want to derail you.
Cutting back a whole bunch of weeds that have overgrown the system that was built in the first place for centuries.
They're not doing anything new. They're just letting the thing work the way it was supposed to before decades of corruption took over. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're all disruption fans. I don't know. So I feel like there's a lot of like, I've been trying to think of like a lot of different like schemes to like help, write history the right way. Honestly. Because I just like,
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing that sort of like came to me over the last few days that was like pulling on this thread of like modernizing government through Doge, so it's actually maximally responsive. I don't know if you guys can hear my kid like screaming his face off. He's having such a good time today. He's having a great day, my little baby Clive. I love him so much. I can't wait for you to have kids, Gally. Oh my God, I'm so excited for you. Anyway, so the one thing I was thinking through is if you think about the timing of Doge, it couldn't have come at a better time. Like forget about who's leading it or whatever. Think about the concept of modernization of the government so that it's maximally aligned with the will of the people and it's maximally efficient. The disruption we're about to go through with artificial intelligence and robotics is going to be fucking crazy for the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to massively disrupt everything. Labor markets, how we do our daily things, how we live our lives, how we do our work, how we start businesses, what businesses we get into, what we deem as work, what we deem as pleasure. Everything's going to get completely just transformed, okay? And if you don't have a government that is responsive to the will of the people through insanely disruptive change, we are fucked beyond belief. Because what happens if you don't have a society that's able to absorb disruption properly? Two things happen. Either it devolves into a dystopia where the power and the influence very rapidly congregate to just like 3 or 4 people or 3 or 4 parties, right? Or you have war because you have so much disruption and so much chaos that people are like, we can't do this anymore. We have to fight to fix this thing, right? It leads to a very poor outcome. And with a government efficiency movement, what's very interesting about that is that it optimizes, it maximizes the chance of the government to be fully responsive with the will of the people, especially during times of insane change that's coming regardless if we like it or not. Like self-driving cars are going to be great, but they're also going to displace car drivers. Human robots are going to be great, but they're going to disrupt warehouse workers. There's going to disrupt factory workers. It's going to disrupt physical labor altogether. And yes, in the end, it'll be better, right? But the transition is going to be insane. It's going to be very, very painful for a lot of people. Like the analogy I use is if you think about what happened when the United States shipped a bunch of its jobs from the Midwest and all these other manufacturing cities to say China and Mexico, right? It's like very equivalent to a human or robot coming in. It's like, well, it's cheaper labor and they'll just do it for us, so we'll just let them do it, right? What happened to those cities? They got destroyed. Why did they get destroyed? We didn't have the proper things in place for us to have enough jobs available for those people to jump into. We didn't have a vibrant enough economy or a vibrant enough and responsive enough government to try and go in and figure out, okay, we have the situation in Detroit, we have the situation in Appalachia, we have the situation in the Midwest. Let's figure out how to fix it. Instead, you have this uniparty in government that's just fucking fighting politics 24/7, trying to get this little thing for their respective whatever, and then nothing gets done. And then we miss our budgets 24/7, and then we have to print more money, which causes inflation. And then there's a bunch of finger pointing, right? It's just unless you have a very efficient government that's able to address the will of the people, especially through disruptive change, we're going to have a huge problem. Like the timing of Doge is nuts. Like it's almost like if it didn't happen now, I would have been significant. I would have been very, 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 very worried about the outcome of the future, because we're going down the wrong path with health outcomes. We're going down the wrong path with debt. With debt, there's so many things we're going down the wrong path of. So anyway, I was thinking about that quite a bit over the weekend. Like the timing of it has been insane. It almost feels like prophetic. I don't even know.
Totally. And it's going to be like there's so many like what kind of. And there's always been relationships with the government and the people like NASA. Like we have some stuff like NASA's like space is the big new technology thing. So now AI will have to develop some sort of AI like regulation or standard or I don't know, something. And I know that's a controversial topic in itself, but my point is like to what you're saying, like government's gonna have to get involved. Like, do robots vote? Do they get social security numbers? Do they pay taxes? Can they own a corporation solely without humans? Like, where do we draw the line on all that? Like that's gonna be super crazy important. And you think about like, oh, the government there was Standard Oil, they broke up the oil company, or there's always been these weird relationships with government and industry throughout the history of every sort of civilization. And so I'm very curious of where's the next chapter of that playbook, because we've had now the government having these relationships with NASA for Boeing, Lockheed Martin, blah, 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 Northrop Grumman. Those are the military contractors as well. And you have the medical companies like the Pfizers, the blah, blah, blah. I think we're going to get a new wave. And those companies, it's just kind of like the change. Like they're led by old people who are now kind of dinosaurs, grifting off the system, great intentions at first, but now they're just making money. Maybe the companies got stolen by people with bad intentions, and it's time for new things. Like you look at Anduril, our VC firm's a tiny investor in Anduril, but they're going to like be one of these new ones, or like Palantir. People are super stoked on Palantir. And like, I think they're a crazy company that could bring insane efficiency to the US government if the government partnered with them. And so and like Tesla like is a how do we make the roads adapt to self-driving cars? Like building the highway infrastructure was one of the greatest projects in the US. It like connected the country, blah, 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 opened us up. So now it's like, okay, now we have a massive innovation in transportation technology. This is like going from the horse to the car. And so maybe we should rethink about the infrastructure around that. Like, do we need charging depots in cities? Or like, I don't know, but I love where you're going with this, Farzad, because it's like, how fun does this get? Once we cut the fat, US goes profitable. And now we have Elon deploying capital, arguably the greatest capital deployer of all time, deploying capital from the taxpayers. We've had a system that has been the worst capital allocator. That's what I should say. Capital allocator of all time has been the U.S. government. I would argue getting worse and worse each year allocating capital. It's like
with the worst outcomes.
Exactly. Yeah. And so now the potential for having some of the best capital allocators ever to allocate the capital of the taxpayer. And I thought Andrea James had a really interesting tweet, which maybe I misinterpreted, but she's a really cool Tesla community person from a long time ago, also Seattleite, I think, but had this tweet about fiduciary duty and how it's like when you have someone's money and you're trained as a financial advisor, you like go through this thing of like kind of like a monk. It's like their money's more important than mine. Like they put their time into earning this money. I have a responsibility for it. And that responsibility is a fiduciary duty. It's like a new type of legal term where you have to act in the best interest of that money. So when you think about the government taking our money as well, like there should be a similar, if not higher standard. That, which is like, you have our money. Like that is so valuable. And so to me, this idea that we don't care the efficacy of the capital allocation of the government is a joke. Like I care about so maybe like even now this conversation's got me fired up, a new way to think about it. It's like, you think our old government was allocating our capital efficiently? I would say no. And we're going bankrupt and that was killing us in a gazillion ways. Now we have a shot at reallocating capital from, I would say, just mathematically the greatest capital allocator of all time, Elon Musk. Like you should be pumped about that because your basically money was being managed by Biden, who's dying, and his team of money suckers, to now the smartest guy in the world who's made himself the richest person. Like now you're with him now. It's like, this guy's gonna be good. So I feel like the capital allocation of the US, that's what gets me excited, is like how efficiently and how big impact exciting projects could we spend, like New York to LA Hyperloop, or I don't know, like maybe you guys have some crazy moonshots of what is going to unfold.